What's your name?
Ruby. Ruby Sunday.
Hello, Ruby Sunday. I'm the Doctor. Hi.
Welcome to About Time, a Doctor Who podcast. I'm Stephen, and I've been a Doctor Who fan since 2005, and usually I'm joined on the podcast by my boyfriend Ben. Today, however, I'm joined by a special guest, Mike, to discuss the 2023 Christmas special, The Church on Ruby Road. And quite frankly, it's about time. So, hello, listeners, welcome back to the podcast, and also welcome back to the podcast, our guest, Mike, our first ever returning guest. So, I didn't scare you off last time.
Am I the first returner?
Yeah, you are, yes.
Marvellous. Hello, thanks
you?
for having me back. I am awesome, thank you. How the
Great.
devil are you?
I am all right, thank you, yeah. It's that weird period between Christmas and New Year at the moment. So it's just that kind of time seems to stand still for a week.
Well, may I be the first person to wish you a very happy slapping day.
What's that?
So I felt that. You know how Boxing Day is the day after Christmas?
Oh, okay, right. I see where you're going with this now.
I felt like the day after Boxing Day needed a name, and I'm not a boxer, but I am a slapper. So
me too.
I felt like slapping day. I now dub this slapping day.
That is incredible.
Day.
I think it needs to be known as that going forward.
This is what goes on in my brain.
Yeah.
All the time.
Thank you for sharing.
But it is. You're welcome. It is that strange sort of betwixtmas time, isn't it? Where you don't know what day it is. You don't know what time it is. You're still eating the same food that you've been eating for the last 400 years, but it's still lovely. I quite like this week, but only since I stopped working in retail because poor retail workers, bless your hearts. That's all I have to say. Definitely. It is nice to enjoy the time now.
Yeah, definitely. So we've had a new Doctor Who episode, The Church on Ruby Road. Yeah, I will be brutally honest. I'll dive in and I'll say when I first watched it on Christmas Day. So I actually sat down and watched it with my parents, which was nice. Like we never watched Doctor Who together anymore, but we used to, obviously, when I was a child. So that was nice. My first reaction to the episode was not that great.
Interesting. Why?
I came away from it feeling a little bit disappointed, I guess. I will just add in there that I've rewatched it in preparation for the podcast, and I liked it a hell of a lot more.
Okay.
I think something that you have spoken about before is about the expectation factor. So I do think that was a big part of it. But I think my initial feelings were, as a companion introduction story, I feel like they work better when they're quite a straightforward story. And you just get to know the companion, and there's quite a simple thread of like Doctor meets this person and they get involved in the adventure, and then he sort of invites them to come along with him, and sort of you get like a thesis statement of what Doctor Who is about and stuff like that. And I felt like this episode as a companion introduction story was very much not that. So I guess it wasn't what I was expecting.
It did have to do a lot, to be fair. It was Christmas special. It was first proper 15th Doctor introduction. It was Ruby's introduction. There's a lot going on, isn't there? There
is, yeah. But I think I may have judged it a bit harshly on first viewing. So yeah, I enjoyed it a lot on second viewing.
Oh, that's good.
Yes,
I really enjoyed it.
Good.
I did sit there in silence for the whole thing because, as we know, we have to put the shutters down and turn the phones off and not allow partners to speak whilst it's actually on the telly. So I did sort of sit there in silence, just letting myself take it in. I think that actually, strangely, this is going to be a bit of a strange tangent, but when 13 became 14 at the end of The Power of the Doctor, I did feel a little bit like, oh, here we go, it's David Tennant again. And we've seen this before. It's even the same scene. And I was a bit like, I'm not sure. And then over the next 300 months, whilst we were waiting for the actual specials to come on, I felt like actually I got more and more excited about seeing the Doctor and Donna back. And I did really enjoy those specials. And I think because, weirdly, the expectation for me was about seeing David Tennant and Catherine Tate back, it kind of took the edge off my expectation for seeing Ncuti. Because when 13 did regenerate, I was genuinely super, super excited for Ncuti's era. I was less excited to see the 14th Doctor. But that seems to have worked in my favour for the expectation factor, and I didn't have too many expectations going in, so I guess I enjoyed it more on first viewing. But also, for context, I've watched it once. I have watched it with the visual commentary, and then I have watched Unleashed. So I haven't actually watched the story a second time yet, but I wanted to see what people thought about how it was made and stuff. I was kind of intrigued as to what Russell was thinking and how Millie found her experience during this episode, and then the goblins. I was kind of straight away, I was intrigued into how they did it, but I need to go in again to take the story in again, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. It is crazy how much your opinion can change on a second viewing, and like how much your mood when you're watching it affects things and so on.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And on Christmas Day as well, you're in a very particular mood, aren't you? And it's like an extra present, I guess. You're kind of excited for the next present. But also frazzled from doing all the cooking and stuff, So it's a bit of it's a funny one. But I did enjoy.
Good. Yeah, I think it's great to see Ncuti in his element now, hitting his stride, his first full episode. And he's such a different Doctor, isn't he? Like, he wears his heart on his sleeve. We get to see him be openly emotional and cry and like really engage. Like, and that's something that we haven't seen really ever. He's either been sort of coldly distant and alien, or so sort of traumatized by the Time War that he's all shut off from everything. So it's a very 2023 version of the character, I feel.
Very, and
which is nice.
I will put this out there as well. I haven't ever really fancied a Doctor before until now.
Yeah,
I just feel like he's beautiful.
He is.
He's got
beautiful.
Such a face, and he can wear anything. I'm not at all jealous, but it's just he leaps off the screen as well.
Yeah,
like just in the way he kind of holds himself and how he puts himself across. And he felt like the Doctor straight away for me, which isn't something that always happens.
No, agreed. The way that we had the bi-generation was so sort of new. And I think it really helped in that regard of making him hit the ground running and feel like a Doctor as soon as, rather than having to have the whole sort of settling in. And I'm still cooking and all that.
Have you made your peace with the bi-generation now? Because I know you and I had very similar sort of initial feelings towards it.
Yeah.
And we weren't sure, really.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still not sure, but I'm not going to be able to change it. Do you know what I mean?
No.
It's happened and it is what it is. I don't mind it actually at all, in the sense of 14 splitting into 14 and 15 and blah, blah, blah. The thing that I think is a bit confusing is the whole, this has happened to every other incarnation of the Doctor, and, it's like, don't want to get into that really, but...
Yeah, I'm not looking at that too closely, to be honest with you. It's kind of over there. I glance at it occasionally and then think, and then kind of come back.
Yeah.
But I think you're right, because obviously, I think what has helped is having Ncuti's first story be so soon after the giggle.
Yes,
Had
true.
we had to wait a really long time speculating about, well, is Ncuti the Doctor, but so is 14, and he's over here doing this, and don't we want to see more 14 and Donna now that they're back together and living the dream? I feel like I'm glad it's happened quickly, and now in watching Ncuti and Millie on screen, I did actually forget about 14 and Donna, because I was like, these two did sort of shine quite brightly for me.
Yeah, definitely.
Straight away.
It was interesting though, talking to my parents, because they haven't really watched Doctor Who for years, but they did watch the 360th specials because they loved David Tennant and Catherine Tate together, and I think they were that type of people that they watched it back then and then they fell off and they wanted to come back on and see the reunion. But they were asking me on Christmas Day, like, oh, so what happens now with David Tennant? Like, Is he going off, getting his own series and stuff like that? And it's just very interesting. Like if that's a perception that a lot of the general public have, it's a bit confusing.
Yeah, it is. But at the same time, it does allow a bit of creative freedom for Russell to be able to tell multi-Doctor stories if he wants to, even though he has sort of said he doesn't really want to do one.
Not his cup of tea,
Yeah. So I like the fact that the freedom is there. And actually, I think I have made my peace now with the fact that the David Tennant Doctors are able to have a happy ending, I guess. I think for me, it was about finding that emotional ending and then trying to sort of be happy about that and then be able to work through the kind of plot bits that led up to it.
Yeah, exactly,
and that's what I needed to do. So I think I have made my peace with that now. I'm happy they've got a happy ending. And it would be lovely to see them again someday, even if just for a special or for something. So yeah, I think, but you're right in that, because Ncuti came on at the end of the giggle and really was the Doctor and took over, and David Tennant sort of became a bit more passive in those final scenes, and Ncuti did really take the lead. It felt like he was almost fully formed in this story already. Very clever.
Yes, was a very good way of doing it, because last time we had a Doctor introduced on Christmas Day, it was David Tennant, and he spent half the episode in bed. So it's a very different way of going about it and letting him hit the ground running. I thought it was good. What do you think about Ruby?
So I actually, first impressions, really like Ruby. I thought she was quite warm. I liked the fact that there was a bit of humour to her character, a bit of sass. She felt just quite natural to me. She didn't feel like fake or constructed. It felt quite authentic, her character, despite the fact that we have got a mystery around who her parents are, where she's from, all that stuff. And I did feel like, and this might be a slight tangent, apologies, that there was a slight Moffatiness about this special that I haven't seen from Russell's writing.
I completely agree.
In the past. And that I did notice that at the time of watching, and that's quite an unusual thing to recognise and be like, oh, there's an impossible, mysterious girl with parents who don't exist, and there's this magical goblins following her around, and there's a bit of a timey-wiminess in that we saw the Doctor at the end, at the beginning, and I thought, oh, this is quite Moffat. Not in a bad way. I don't dislike Moffat stuff, but it was just unusual. Didn't expect it.
Yeah, I definitely noticed that as well. I feel like it's almost like, because Russell's obviously kept up with the show since he left, it's kind of like he's taken some leaves out of the intervening showrunners' books. It's like he's learnt from, Moffat has shown him a different way of running the show, and he's sort of cherry picked like, oh, I could use something like that as well. Like, I think the timey-wimey stuff was where it really lost me, where on first viewing, when Ruby got sort of taken out of time, I started to feel like, oh, this is a bit complicated, but that's probably just me on Christmas Day feeling befuddled. Because on second viewing, I was like, no, it's fine. It makes perfect sense. But
yes, it did make sense, and it was quite clever. I do like when the writers use the time travel aspect of the show, because it isn't always used. It's just used as a vehicle to get to a location, and then the story happens. Yeah, and I do quite like when there's a little clever use of the time stuff. And so when she disappeared, it made complete sense. And him working it out and being like, they've gone back and they've taken her instead because of all this coincidence. And I thought it was quite clever, actually. And then I just really liked Ruby. I just really liked her. I've seen people online comparing her to Clara.
I was literally about to say that.
There's a sort of a general feeling, though, that's being said negatively. That's what's happening online. Okay. That's the complaint.
Well, the funny thing from my point of view, because I have never really been a Clara fan. She always rubbed me up the wrong way. And I got very strong Clara vibes from Ruby. but I didn't dislike her. So I don't know why that is, quite how that works.
I think it's something to do with the fact that you got to meet Ruby's family, and they are fabulous.
Probably.
And this is where Russell just excels in building these families and relationships, and they're just so believable and, again, authentic. And I think it's probably seeing Ruby through the eyes of people who love her already makes you love her, whereas Clara came alone.
Out of nowhere, yeah.
Out of nowhere and as a mystery, you know?
Yes.
And then when we met Clara's nan, it was like, oh, I love Clara's nan. She's amazing. And she loves Clara. And it was so fleeting. You didn't get enough of it. So I think it probably has something to do with that. You saw her with her friends as well, though. You saw her out in a band and having a drink and all that sort of stuff. And
that's
that was
Russell,
just really relatable.
Making a character have a real life, a full life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas we only saw Clara really like working.
Yes.
That's how we saw her, and that's not enough for us to get in. So I do understand. But that comparison has been made online. I didn't see it straight away when I watched it, if I'm honest. It's not something I noticed, but at the same time, when I figured out that there was a slight mystery going on with this companion, you can't help but think of Clara in that context then, so I do get it.
Yeah. I think it was a lot of little things, really. Her wardrobe, some of her line deliveries almost. Like, I felt like, because, you know, Millie's said that she grew up watching Matt Smith and so on. Like, I feel like you can tell she grew up watching the Moffat era. Some of her line deliveries, like... They had a bit of a tendency at that time. I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but they would sort of say certain things like, you know, put little pauses in and stuff, like in strange places in the lines. And I felt like she was starting to do that in this episode. Lots of little callbacks. I feel like, you know, whether intentional or not, I don't know, but no, I like her.
I'm going to look out for those. Yeah, no, I like her too. And her family I thought were amazing too.
Yes.
I thought the flat was insane, but in a good way.
Yeah.
I loved the kitchen, yellow and orange kitchen. Sign me up. And I liked what connected Ruby with this new little baby that was being delivered to be fostered, and actually how Russell then wove that into the Doctor when the Doctor is there over the crib, sort of seeing himself and saying, almost thinking out loud, saying, well, I was adopted. And then sort of like, oh, that's a really great story beat for this Doctor at this time, being respectful to an era that a lot of people don't like, and a plot twist that a lot of people still don't like and still complain about. But giving it that heart that only Russell can give.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a really, really good moment.
Yeah, it was. It was. So Davina McCall had a role in this episode, and it wasn't just the typical Russell cameo of, like, you know, she's on TV doing like a 5-second thing. She was actually a character in the episode, which was really interesting. I thought she did really well.
Yeah, same.
She, but in my household, when we were watching it, my parents were both very much not fans of Davina McCall, and when she got squashed by the Christmas tree, they were like, oh, thank God for that. And then then when he rescued her at the end, they were like, oh, why did he have to save her?
They know it's not real, right?
Yeah. But yeah, I thought she did really well. And also the fact that they used, from the commentary, they were saying about how they took a lot of care with contacting the show Long Lost Family that she does, and sort of wanting to do it justice and respect it, even though they couldn't actually use the name for copyright. But I thought they did that really nicely. And that little scene where they're off camera and Davina's just checking with Ruby, like, I used the word foundling. Are you comfortable with that? That was very nice.
It was. Yeah, no, she did do well, and I thought it was quite funny when she was sort of nearly killed. Well, she was killed by a Christmas tree. What a wonderful parallel to Christmas specials of the past. Yeah, I enjoyed that.
Yeah, we also got a reappearance of the famous Susan Twist.
What is going on?
Although she was uncredited in this episode, so what is going on?
Do you have a theory?
Well, I mean, there could be something. She could be the new, bad wolf being
sprinkled
Susan
in every
and don't
say Rani. Okay?
Oh, that
She's
comes
Rani.
later. That comes
She's
later.
Susan.
My gut instinct is saying they cast this actress called Susan Twist, and they thought that name is hilarious because it'll send the fans into a frenzy. So they're just like, let's keep hiring her and keep using her in little roles just to mess with the fans.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. I didn't clock it, though. I only saw it on Twitter afterwards. But
yes.
Yeah, I think that is hilarious. That's so cheeky. So it's just so Russell.
Yes.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you've got Mrs. Flood with her wink to camera and never seen a TARDIS before, which I feel like is definitely setting something up.
Yes.
Again, I think Russell's probably, he's very aware that he's making the show now in an age where the internet is just, all the fans are going to be discussing it and working things out together. So he's probably sprinkling a lot of red herrings in. So, I mean, my thought, I know it sounds ridiculous, but my first thought was, Mrs. Flood, is there something in that name? I was thinking, well, flood is caused by rain, and rain is an anagram of Rani. If you want to go down that route.
Oh, there it is.
But I don't, either I'm reading too much into it, or it's Russell going, oh, put that in as like a little red herring.
Yeah, but there's also the fact that, flood is a lot of water. Water travels by river.
Mm-hmm.
Just saying, putting that out there.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of, to be honest, I think it's more likely that she is something that we don't know, that she isn't a connection to something that we have had already, and that she's a new story plot point that's going to weave its way through this time. And I quite like that. That's quite nice.
Yes. The funny thing is, though, like I've been involved with the fan community since I became a fan in 2005. Like I used to go on the forums and stuff, and every series, people have been coming out with these mad theories about, oh, Susan's coming back next series, or the Rani or whatever, and it's become a joke. Like they're never going to bring those people back, and yet maybe they're at a point in the show now where Russell actually, they've done a lot of other stuff, like maybe he is interested in exploring some of that stuff. Who knows at this point?
Maybe.
We shall see.
We shall see.
I was a little bit, I don't know if disappointed is the right word, but the fact that Ruby is Mancunian, but she's had to move down to London. And it's like, it feels like every companion has to come from, or every Russell companion has to come from London. And when we heard that she was Mancunian, I was thinking, oh, we're going to get, the Doctor meeting a companion in a different place, a bit like we had with Sheffield with the fam. And so it was just a bit like, oh, okay, it's London centred again.
I wonder if that has something to do with the fact that that's just where Unit HQ is.
Probably, yeah, probably.
He's sort of just like lining up the things he needs for his Whoniverse plan.
Yeah.
I mean, there is something quite nice about seeing London, though, and it just feels a bit bigger and a bit more epic, and as well as it being for an international audience. So it might just be, let's give them the landmarks.
Yeah,
because
probably.
That's what they want to see on screen, and they'll look marvellous. So it could just be something to do with that. But I get what you mean. I enjoyed the non-London part of the show in the past few years.
Yeah.
But then again, it's kind of nice to come back to. So yeah, mixed feelings for me, but I get you. Is there anything then? So you said you came away disappointed from this episode.
Yeah.
So and do you think that is just the expectation factor, or was there anything in the episode that you thought either not so good, could be better? Like what was it that made you feel like that, do you think?
I think a big thing is that they hyped up the goblins a lot in the run-up to the episode, and then they kind of weren't in it that much. Like, the Doctor hardly interacted with them. They didn't speak at all. They just sang that song that we already had heard. And it was a bit like, okay, cool. Do you know what I mean?
I do. I have to say about with as we're on the song as well, like when I first heard the song out of context, I mean, everyone was loving it. Everyone's going wild. This is amazing. And I was sat there a bit like, oh, really? Really? Are you hearing the same thing?
Yeah.
Like, I don't get it. It just didn't click for me.
I was completely on the same page as you. I literally, I listened to it and I texted my friend and I was like, this is awful. I was like, this is
Yes.
a terrible tune, terrible lyrics. What are they doing? And then kind of,
and you could tell that Russell wrote the words, though, couldn't you? Like all his little kind of like his rhyming sass came out, and you could tell it was him.
But I was like, is it deliberately twee and crass? Like it probably was to an extent. Yeah, I won't lie. I mean, obviously, having heard it many times since then, it's grown on me. It gets stuck in my head. It was stuck in my head before we started this recording. Mm-hmm. But yeah,
in the context of the episode, it worked so much better for me.
Yes.
Like as it came on and it was happening, I was like, "This is ridiculous," and I feel like you either have to go with it at this point, or you really do kind of push it away. And I went with it, and I feel like I think that Shooty and Millie did an amazing job just singing like that. And I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, I liked the first part of the song with the baby on the conveyor belt. And Janice singing. I thought that worked well in the episode, but actually I found like the bit when Shooty and Millie started singing, it was a bit, because Russell said he was obviously drew inspiration from Buffy in their musical episode, and I felt like it was a bit trying to be that.
Yes.
Like, I don't know, I'm do you know what? I'm just a grumpy old git. It's Christmas Day, it's supposed to be a bit of fun. And I'm just Scrooge, but
no, you're not Scrooge.
But I just found it a little bit cringy. I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be that misery person who's like, oh, it was a load of old shit. But it didn't really work for me. Like I found it a bit grating and a bit cringy. Like the whole Millie's line about how diddly deet you.
Yeah,
I know. Yeah. I get it. She's trying to on the spot. She's trying to think of a rhyme. But it was just like, ugh.
Can I confess something?
Yeah.
Right? Because diddly deet you also diddly deeted me, and I was sort of thinking, oh, that is cringe. That is cringe, and it's written like that because yes, she's trying to, like you said, to rhyme on the spot and sing whilst dancing on a conveyor belt in front of the Goblin King. So I was walking around the house, I think it must have been yesterday, and it was also in my head, but I don't know the words. So I found myself trying to come up with a rhyme on the spot as if I were also in that situation.
Yeah. And
now, admittedly, I didn't say diddly dee me, whatever she said, but I don't think mine was any better than that.
No.
So I am happy to accept that is what she thought, and she worked it. So I'm okay with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, God.
I don't know.
And actually, they both have nice voices.
They do, yeah. No, they sounded really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that bit in Unleashed where Shooty was saying, like, he was assuming they were going to record it in a studio and then, like, just lip sync to it. And he was like, the day is approaching and no one said anything. And just like, right, go on, do it.
Can you imagine the panic? I can't. I can't. But actually, I'm really glad they did it that way, because the lip syncing thing is always obvious. It just always is obvious.
Yes.
And I mean, with the goblin, it was less obvious because it was a goblin. But with the two of them, because they were singing, you could see like the muscles in their neck where they were kind of singing, projecting and breathing differently. And I respect that because I like that that's authentic. But I have to say, right, I actually did really, really, really like the goblins. I thought they were so like cute and creepy, and I was fascinated to see how they did them and how they were actual kind of, adult-sized people dressed as goblins. And when Stefan was there, beautiful, gorgeous, lovely Stefan was there interviewing the goblin who turned out to be Poe from the Teletubbies, and how he turned around being like, that was so weird. That was just so weird. All the way through that conversation, Jay and I were watching it, we were both like, this is so weird. This is just so weird because it's a goblin, but it's human-sized, but it was a goblin. I mean, if it blinked as well, I'd have been like, oh, this is too creepy. This is just too strange. So I really, really, I'm very impressed with what they did and how they did that. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
And obviously the fact that the set was made to be smaller,
Yes.
so that they looked bigger inside it. And I just love all that stuff. That was so good.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's really cool. Yeah, there's just a couple of the goblins that sort of have stuck in my head. Like there's one shot during the song where one of them's just kind of, he looks a bit spaced out, like he's looking into the distance, and he's just sort of like dancing on the spot, like. Yeah, like, or just like walking on the spot, and he's just stuck in my head. And then obviously the one who's like, he can eat me, he makes me swoon. I think that's one of my new spirit animals.
Yes, 100%. Put that on a t-shirt and I will buy it.
Speaking of swooning, I thought the policeman was really cute.
Oh, he was. That was a lovely scene as well.
Yes, it was nice.
And I love the fact that they've added that scene. I completely get why as well they wanted the Doctor to come in sooner. Because if he hadn't come in sooner, we would have only seen him as the part where he was dancing in the club, which I want to come back to.
Mm-hmm.
And then the part where he was running on the rooftop then, shouting at Ruby, being like, what have you jumped on a ladder for? Are you mental?
Yeah.
So I'm glad we had that moment with him earlier on. I think that was the right call. I think it would have worked and waiting to see the Doctor and his sort of slowly kind of coming 20 minutes later, but we have seen that before, and Russell has done similar things to that before. So it was fresher to have him being like, I am the Doctor, I don't have an occupation, I was just snowman, goodbye. And I liked that. I thought that worked well for me. And the lady with the pram with the shopping.
It's my shopping. I do think it's interesting though that this was a note from Disney, and it sounds like Disney are, they're putting quite a bit of input creatively, which I didn't realise necessarily was going to be the case. And I
suppose that Russell could just choose to not do.
That's what I was going to say.
Like, nah, the episode's done.
Can he, or is he forced to do what they say? I don't know. I suppose if he felt really strongly, he could. Oh, this was a good note, yeah. But theoretically, something in the future, like if he really strongly disagreed, I'm sure he could argue. Yeah, I can imagine him on a commentary in the future, just being like, "Oh, Disney wanted me to do this, and I felt very, very strongly that was wrong. I fought for that. Excuse the Welsh accent.
That's what I was going to say. It's also I am ignoring it, but But I also found it really, really interesting, though, that he is freely telling us, oh, Disney suggested this, so we've added it in.
Yes.
And that's what I find fascinating about Russell. And I think this is a bit of a subtle change in Russell from previous era to now, is his willingness to be as open and vocal as he is being now. I think that some things he would have kept to himself back then. I don't know. I can't think of an example, but I can't remember ever hearing him say, "Oh, well, the BBC didn't want us to do that, so we didn't do it," or "BBC suggested this and we've done it." I don't remember him saying that, but for him to do that and be that open about it intrigues me.
I think he's in a very different place now in his career, because he's essentially like royalty of TV, more so than he was, I would say, when he brought Doctor Who back.
I agree.
Yeah.
He has more power now himself. Yeah. And so that is interesting that he's, but it's also nice to hear that it's humbling that they suggested something about something that he has written and made, and he's willing to be like, yes, let's do that, let's try it, let's put that in, and it made sense. So it's interesting on both sides of that coin, which is cool.
Just going back to that scene with the policeman, which was really nice. I felt like with the Doctor being all like, she's going to say yes, and sort of then explaining how he realised what was going on. It was very Sherlock Holmes-esque, which, again, Moffat used to do a lot with the Doctor, because obviously, being the Sherlock man as well.
Yes.
I watched that and I feel like Russell's watched the Moffat era and been like, yes, this is part of who the Doctor is as well. That his brain is so fast and he can pull all these things together in a second.
It does make sense. There is definitely a logic to that. But he also did it about a very domestic thing.
Yeah.
So it wasn't too Moffat-y in that it was, or Sherlock-y, you know, with things dropping and Mavity. We'll come back to Mavity.
Mm-hmm.
But he did it in he used a very domestic, normal, lovely thing.
Yes.
That everybody can identify with, and went all Sherlock on it. And I think that combination really is kind of who the Doctor is now.
Yes.
As well as in that scene, the Doctor sort of, in the slightly before with the lady with the pram, where he was just like, what are you doing out at midnight with a pram? Like he was heavily judging her, being like, why are you walking a baby around right now? There are people drinking over here. And I liked that. He was quite judgy and sassy.
Yes.
I like that too. I like that part of the Doctor.
Yeah. I felt that with 14 and the giggle. When he stopped that man who was in front of the car and he was like, can I just ask, what are you doing? Like, he's not really been like that before.
No, that's quite a nice development. I like that.
So go on then, let's talk Mavity.
I just want it to be undone.
So do I.
I get that it was a joke in that episode and how Donna was confused about it and how the Doctor was saying gravity and Mavity, and I that all made sense because it added that kind of like timey-wimey humour. But I felt like it just needs to be gone.
Yeah.
It needs to be undone. We can't keep calling it Mavity.
No. Do you think it's just a running joke that's going to go on, or do you think it's laying the seed for something that's it's going to be relevant to something?
My gut is saying running joke.
Yeah.
I can't logic that. I don't know, because Russell does turn things around and use things that he's had in his back pocket as a big plot point later on. But this is the changing of a word. I can't see how practically that could be used in order to...
It could be a small piece of a much larger puzzle, I think. If we obviously as well remember the fact that Susan Twist was in that scene with Isaac Newton, maybe lots of things are being changed sort of subtly, and Mavity is kind of like a really obvious example of it. I don't know. Yes,
it could very well be. It could be a kind of a Bad Wolf, Torchwood, Saxon-esque little word that gets getting moved through. It's very, very possible, but right now, gut is saying it was a joke, and this is a red herring. That's what my prediction is.
Yeah,
this is one of his
likely.
red herrings where he's like, nah, they're going to expect a Bad Wolf. Let's give them Mavity. And I don't like it.
No. It makes me think of McCavity from Cats.
And not in a good way.
No. So you also said you wanted to talk about Shooty and the club in the kilt. Yes,
because first of all, it was beautifully shot.
Yeah.
I love the colours, the purples, and I love the vibe and the atmosphere of the shot of the actual physical thing that we saw on screen. But I also really, really enjoyed the vibe the Doctor was giving in that moment. And yeah, okay, so we're seeing it through Millie's eyes, and Millie is sort of like staring off into this club, and there's this guy who is commanding the dance floor, who's looking frickin' awesome in his vest and kilt.
See, I heard myself do that, and I was like, that was involuntary.
That was a slip, if ever there was one. I just... He did. He looks really hot and really, really good in that scene. But it was this really joyful freedom of expression that the Doctor was doing in that scene. He was feeling the moment and the music and dancing in the middle of a crowd of people. We have never, ever seen the Doctor do that before.
No.
And if any moment in an episode characterized this particular incarnation, I feel like this has done it.
Yes.
It just really felt so different to me than the Doctor has done in the past.
Yes.
There is a a real genuine feeling of the fact that he's let go of a lot of the baggage.
Yes.
Which is obviously what 14 is currently doing over there, with Donna working through that and like resting and letting himself heal. Yeah, I just thought that it really encapsulated who the 15th Doctor is. And it was done, through dance, not through words, not through, crying, not through man pain, angst. It was all that was swept aside, and it was in the moment and in a really positive way, and I thought that was fab.
Yeah, I agree. It's so different for the Doctor, isn't it? Because we tend to think of the Doctor as an awkward hero who's a bit, he's very relatable to those of us who sort of, don't have the best social skills, and he's kind of, got that neurodivergent energy.
You and me.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
And yeah, I feel like this, like you say, this is a great sort of evolution in that at this point in his very, very long life, he's grown and he's found himself letting go of certain things, and it doesn't mean that he's always necessarily going to be like that. Maybe the next incarnation could be different, but where he is right now in his life, that's what we're seeing, and it's refreshing. And I think it maybe changes the dynamic of the character and like how he's going to interact in the stories that are to come and stuff, which is really cool.
Oh yeah, well, I feel like we're going to see a very differently emotional Doctor, and I think the stories are going to be like that as well, and not just side characters having relationships or the companion having relationships. I think we're going to see a lot more of the Doctor encountering and dealing with difficult emotions for himself, whether that be having a connection with another character, that another person that he didn't expect to have. It could be falling in love. It could be falling in lust. It could be anything. But I feel like this Doctor is willing to let those things happen, whereas previous incarnations probably would have pushed that down.
Yes.
Right now, anyway, this is his first. These are his first adventures and first stories after regeneration. And so this season might be a little bit lighter for him as a character in terms of letting himself feel things and trying new things and going through that. And as we go further down the line, it's very possible that more of the darker side of the Doctor will come out. I think that's kind of a natural thing that happens to a lot of the Doctors and their stories. And I don't see it being any different here. It's just really nice to see the starting point of this Doctor being so light. We just haven't seen that before.
I was just thinking, though, one thing that was sort of missing from this episode was Ruby doesn't necessarily know that he's an alien.
True.
It was never mentioned. I think she worked out the time travel thing at the end. But she doesn't even know that he's from another planet. So there's I think when the series starts, I think there's some gaps to fill. With they have that technically we haven't seen them sort of agree that they're going to go traveling together yet. So all she's done is go into the TARDIS and be wowed. With the sort of expectation, but yeah.
Also, there's a strange slight shift, I think, in that from the last episode, The Giggle, where we had the superstition game playing thing at the end of Wild Blue Yonder, which allowed the toy maker in, and it's sort of it's bending the rules a bit from science fiction to fantasy to magical. It's sort of like there's a bit of a blurring of the lines here. I know the Doctor Who has always kind of had that, but this was goblins. This wasn't aliens. This was another strange mythical creature that every person in the world kind of knows about from folklore and things.
Yes.
So that wasn't necessarily alien either. And I quite like that Doctor Who is dipping its toes into this area of things.
I don't mind it. I think also though for those fans who don't really enjoy it going down the fantasy aspect, I think it's still open that you can justify it however you want in your own mind. Just because they didn't sort of shoehorn in an explanation about, these are aliens and they are what have, informed the human myths of goblins. You can still interpret it that way if you want to.
Yeah. What did you think about the Goblin King?
I was just thinking about him. Yeah. He was cool. I liked how in Unleashed you saw how he was, a massive puppet.
Yes.
And apparently Millie and her like makeup artist or something were obsessed with it.
Yeah. Yeah. But it was another one of those things that I think I just
Assumed was
presumed
CGI,
it was
yeah.
CGI. Again, and the same thing happened with the Meep. I didn't expect that to have been done practically with a bit of like CG augmentation. And I think that it's amazing that these things are looking on screen as if they aren't real, but they are. It's normally the other way around. You normally think that doesn't look real. They've obviously had a bit of a cheap day in the computer studio this week.
Yeah.
And it's cool. It's so cool. I was very impressed with it.
Yeah. I guess that was the big thing. Like, he was set up to be the big bad of the episode. Like, we've got the goblins, and then we've got the massive goblin king. Like, he's the big boss. And then, like, he didn't really do anything. He just sat there being a blob. Like, that's the title of my autobiography.
Same, Christmas Day, I can relate. It's even the same on Boxing Day and on Slapping Day.
Yep.
Just sitting here, hoping not to be impaled by a church spire.
Yeah.
Just, you know...
Let's not go there.
Do you know when you say things sometimes and you forget you're being recorded for a podcast? It happens to me all the time, honestly, sometimes. Yeah. But yeah, you know, it was a gruesome death, that's all I'm saying.
It was, yeah. And then it was interesting how the ship sort of disintegrated and faded away after he'd been spiked.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, just
what is
convenient.
that? Yeah.
I tell you what I did like, though, as well, an extension of that scene, is the fact that the 15th Doctor just stood there watching Millie's mum walk away. And I don't know, I didn't notice it on first viewing. I've seen it on clips online since, but there was a kind of a tear down Ncuti's face.
Yes.
But I hadn't noticed on the first time. And I thought that was sort of really moving. Actually, very, very moving, because he could have run over at that point and been like, who are you? What are you doing? Why are you leaving her here? But if he does that, he then obviously changes the person who he's met and kind of his own timeline in a way then, in a strange way, he would have interfered with what has already happened. And also dealing with his own feelings about the fact that he was abandoned. Well, 100%. Potentially abandoned. Yeah. We don't know. But I just thought that was incredibly moving and very, very well played.
Yes.
Visually stunning as well. It was a really, really great moment.
It does tie into the way 13 sort of made the decision with, she was given that watch thing, wasn't she? That was like, it contained all the answers, but she just like, she put it away and not looked at it. I feel like it's, you know, there's not necessarily any need to explore that. Yeah. No,
but there's an emotional payoff for that moment now that we got to see, which is really important to see for the Doctor, and it's just great that he's dealing with that.
The slightly sad thing is, though, that I agree that it feels like it doesn't need to be explored, but I feel like hints from the commentary suggest it is going to be a whole big thing. You know, Russell was saying to Millie, like, oh, I'm sure we'll never see that person again, and like, with obviously like a hint of irony.
Yes.
So
yes.
Yeah, but we should see.
There's something happening, isn't there, with Millie's sort of past and history and family history. I think we are going to learn more about that.
This is a tiny, silly point, but a question just occurred to me about Davina when she calls Ruby to tell her that they've had no success with the DNA tests. And I was watching and I was thinking, when they make the show that she makes, does Davina McCall actually personally ring up the people? I can't imagine she does, but maybe she does. I don't know. But
no, I just got this feeling that they no, unless she's being filmed, she's not making phone calls.
No, I was like, she's taking it really seriously, which is nice.
Very seriously.
Yeah,
I think it was more about the fact that she had been, you know, she fell off a boat on dry land and was trampled by a moose and looking for someone to blame.
Oh yes, it was
Ruby.
personal. Yeah, because I was going to say it's not just that
personal.
It's not just that she's she's doing it herself. It was Christmas Eve. Like she could have been with her family, but she was phoning up Ruby Sunday. Like, yeah.
Yes.
So another minor nitpick that just kind of irritates me a bit is it's been a long time since we've seen a really nice TARDIS fade in and out effect. If you remember the Russell era, particularly like series 1, that sort of time, it looked so beautiful when it faded in and out, and you could see the back wall through it, and it looked really 3D, you know? And now literally they just fade it like a PowerPoint effect. And
I hadn't noticed.
Do you know what? I think it's been doing that since the Moffat era, I think. And I really hoped when Russell came back they would make it look more beautiful again. But sadly not. Yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting. So when it used to fade in, fade out, are you talking about the fact that you'd kind of like fade out, you'd see a bit of wall and it would come back? And then
that too. There's that. So they're still trying to do that but it just looks really weird to me. Like it sort of fades out, fades in, fades out, fades in. And it's like, it really should be a much more gradual sort of gentle thing, I think.
Okay, so the transition is happening too quickly.
But it's also the fact that like they use CGI in the 2005 series, and you can see the outline of all the four walls of the TARDIS. Like if you imagine the TARDIS was made of glass, and you could see the back wall through it and stuff. It kind of looked like that, and now literally you can't see through it. It's just the flat image is just being faded away. Like I'm being super nitpicky, but it just every time I see it, I'm just thinking, oh, that could have looked so much nicer.
Hey, that's fine. This is what podcasters do.
Yeah,
we nitpick.
Yeah,
we do. I don't think I have many nitpicks about this episode. I mean, I've only watched it the once, really, so I feel like in order to kind of get into the story nitpicks, I would need to watch it again. But I think a lot of the time for me, I think I've said this before on other recordings, it's as long as I am satisfied emotionally, the episode is good. That is kind of how I take to these things.
Yeah,
when the
tend to agree.
Bi-generation happened, that's where the plot took over for me, and my brain couldn't compute all the questions and what does this mean, and I don't get it, and why aren't we saying goodbye to 14? Now we have to say kind of like a ta-ra, 14, you're over there, we're just not allowed to see you whilst you go on your adventures now. And that didn't, I couldn't, it took a while for me to work through that. Whereas this story, emotionally, it had a payoff. And so therefore I feel quite satisfied with it. So I don't think I have too many nitpicks, really. I can't think, I think it flowed nicely. It had a really good pace. I liked the characterization. I liked how it looked. Okay, I will say one nitpick. I have one. I found one. Guys, I dug and I found it. I did, once again, sometimes find the music too loud. And over the speaking, over the dialogue. It doesn't happen all the time, but occasionally I was like, what did they just say? And it was just because the music was crescendoing and I couldn't hear what they were saying.
Yes.
Do you find that?
Generally not. I know it's a common complaint. I generally don't find that, but I can see what you mean, particularly in this episode. It was very prominent. It was, and it seems, to be fair, it's not something that really bothers me that much. And normally I don't notice it. It's like you just said, it is something that I do hear or read online. It's a common complaint, but in this episode, I did notice it. It did happen for me. I was a bit like, I can't hear what they're saying right now. Okay.
But, it's a really, really, really small nitpick amongst what I thought was a really, really good episode.
Yeah. I'm glad that I enjoyed it more on a second watch because I don't like not liking it.
No, I know.
Yeah.
Imagine how I felt going into my recording of The Giggle and I was the negative voice.
Yeah.
And that is really unusual for me. I tend to be the person who's generally positive and who always finds the positive and who, when I'm asking the questions and I was hearing all this joy, I was just like, they have experienced this differently to me.
Yeah.
And that is very, very interesting. And it did make for an interesting chat. But yeah, we don't like not liking things.
No, I mean, some people do, I think. Some people take pleasure in it.
You're right.
But,
Some people revel in it. Yeah.
No.
How is Ben, by the way?
I see what you did there.
I put the B in subtle.
Yeah. Yeah, he's good. We've started watching Torchwood series 2, so that'll be coming along soon. But yes, he's living up to his character.
Good. I'm glad he is good.
Never change.
No, don't change. Don't change.
No. So, with all of these new episodes that have been coming out, I've been putting out question to our social media followers to let me know what they thought of the episode. And so I like to read out a little selection. Amber on Twitter, she says, Stephen, remember when you said you didn't like to watch the episodes with your family when you were younger because everyone spoke over it? Yeah, I felt that. She goes, other than that, I really enjoyed it.
Oh,
that's so relatable.
That's a problem. Mm-hmm.
Natalie says, adored it, but loathed the musical number. Louis says, a brilliant start on the 15th Doctor's era. Everything about it was just spectacular. Owen says, too much talking for my liking. I wanted to see the goblins in action more. I do agree on wanting to see more from the goblins, I think. But,
yes,
yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
Analysing DW says, after one episode, I already like Ruby to the point I'm certain I'll be crushed when she leaves. I don't want to think about that yet. I don't want to think about her
we've
leaving.
got a long way to go. Yeah.
Yeah. Jimmy Jukebox just says, camp and magnificent.
Enough about me.
Yeah. You stole my joke there. I was going to claim that for myself. But
Oh, I'm so sorry.
that's all right. Anto says it was glorious. Shooty is the Doctor through and through. He was absolutely born for the role, and I loved every second of it. So, nice. I think this episode has had a really positive response overall, which is really nice. It did make me feel a bit weird after I didn't particularly enjoy it on first viewing, and I sort of went online and the response was so overwhelmingly positive. I was like, oh, is it me? Turns out maybe it was, because I liked it on second viewing.
But that's such a really interesting point that you just said, because that is something that I think we all do now. We all do watch the episodes, and then we already have our own opinion and feelings about how we felt about what we just saw, and then we go online and we are sometimes not met with the same reaction to what we had. I'm not going to say I don't go online after the episode to see what everybody thought, because I do, because I can't help but do that. But yeah. I don't let other people's opinions of what they just saw have an effect on how I felt about it.
Absolutely. I think that's great.
But it is also hard to be the person who experiences it one way and goes on and sees everybody else experiencing it a different way. That's a really funny place to be in as well.
Yes, because a lot of the time as well, like if you experience it differently, and then you see a lot of stuff online where people are almost sort of implying that, well, if you didn't like it, it's because you didn't understand it and you were stupid for not understanding it or something like that. You know what I mean?
I do.
So yeah, people have different takeaways from different things.
Of course they do. Yeah. Just don't shit on everybody else who is enjoying it.
No, exactly.
Like you responded respectfully. You responded in a way that was like, I'm not sure whether that was what I wanted to see. I'm not sure whether I enjoyed that. But look at all these people who did enjoy it. Wow, maybe I need to watch that in a different frame of mind and see how I feel about it then. And that's a really respectful, lovely thing to do. And it shows you're a decent human being and not an arsehole like all these other people on Twitter. Not everybody, but those people who do push those things, they're just being a bit of a dick, and they need to stop being a bit of a dick.
Yeah. It's unfortunate. It's the unfortunate thing about Twitter is it turns people that way. Mm-hmm. But yes, I try not to get involved in too much on there.
Same.
Yeah.
Life is too short.
Yes. Anyway, thank you to listeners who sent in their thoughts for me. I always love reading them. And actually, we've got something slightly special this episode because one of our listeners, Will, has actually sent in a voice note detailing their thoughts on the episode. So Will is an animator and also said to me about how it's their dream one day to animate something for Doctor Who. So while you listen to Will's voice note, perhaps you could manifest for them, give them some positive energy to achieving that dream one day. But I will play that now.
Hi, About Time podcast. My name's Will. I've been listening to the show for a couple of months, so it's lovely to be asked to share my thoughts on the church on Ruby Road. Generally speaking, I thought it was amazing. Cinematography, sets, VFX, acting, all that sort of stuff. I thought it was such a solid episode. I thought the goblins were great. I love the idea of exploring more magical fantasy type stuff. I know that Ben would probably be, if he heard this, would probably be raging right now because of how much he says that Doctor Who is a sci-fi show, not a fantasy show. But I think it can be both, and I love seeing when it is both. As a non-binary person, I thought that Shooty dancing in a kilt in the club was like amazing. Just, I don't know, just to normalise that sort of stuff. Like, I know that a kilt is technically masculine clothing or whatever, but a lot of people online have been raging because they think it's a skirt. And even if it was a skirt, like, let them think it's a skirt because he looks so cool in that kilt, or skirt, whatever you want to say. And I think just seeing more of that sort of stuff makes me feel more comfortable about going outside as a somewhat masculine presenting person, but in feminine clothes and all that sort of stuff. So, having that front and centre on Doctor Who is, I already feel more like Shooty, his doctor, than any of the other doctors. I feel like I relate to him most already, and I've only seen him in like 1 and a bit episodes. So that's a very good sign. I quite like the fact that we didn't find out who Ruby's mother was, but I'm so sure that is going to be resolved in the future. I love the idea that we never find out, and it's just like, that's just how it is. Ruby never finds out, we never find out. But it's Russell. I'm sure she's going to be someone big, and everyone online is already probably saying, oh, is it the Rani? Is it the Master? Or something like that. But I like the idea that we never find out, but come on, Russell's going to resolve that at some point. And a perfect example of what I'm talking about with Russell's writing is Mrs. Flood at the end, breaking the fourth wall and going, what, you never seen a TARDIS before? And it's just, Russell T Davies is about as subtle with his writing as a punch in the face, right? I love many of his episodes. I can just imagine Russell writing that sort of thing and be like, I absolutely love this reveal because I'm so clever and you're going to have to wait years for it to be resolved because that's just how devious I am. And I'm just like, oh, come on, just try and be more subtle with it, That's all my thoughts. Thank you very much for letting me do this. Love the podcast and hope everyone had a lovely Christmas.
Thank you for that, Will. It was really great to hear your thoughts. Also, your Russell T Davies impression was hilarious. Brilliant. Mike, thank you so much for coming on and joining me to talk about this episode. It's been a pleasure to have you back.
It's been a pleasure to be on. Thanks for having me back. Marvellous.
You are a lot of fun. Yeah. Always laugh a lot when I record with you.
That's good, I think.
Yes. Oh, it is. So thank you. Why don't you remind listeners where they can find you and your podcasts? So
my podcast is called Who Gives A Flux, and you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Who Flux Pod. And in case you didn't know, it's Doctor Who podcast.
Yes. And it's wonderful. It's wonderful.
Thank you. I enjoy it.
So with that, stay tuned for one final mini contribution from Will at the end of the episode. Until the next time, stay fantastic.
But before I go, I just want to say I hope your Christmas was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Because you know what? So was mine.